City, of course. Well, it turns out that if you support Donald Trump, she called you a basket of deplorables. Let's listen to what she said.
To just be grossly generalistic, you could put half of Trump supporters into what I call the basket of deplorables. Right? The racist, sexist, homophobic, xenophobic, Islamophobic, you name it. And unfortunately, there are people like that. And he has lifted them up.
Be generalistic or whatever. No one
whatever word. Is that a real word? No.
What you're watching here is someone pander to her audience. This was a Barbra Streisand-led event, a fundraiser, and she's looking at a room full of rich liberals and saying, you're exactly right. People who don't live in your neighborhood are disgusting. They're immoral, they're addicted to OxyContin, they're racist, they're sexist, they're homophobic, they're Islamophobic. By the way, when did that get in the litany anyway? If you don't like Islam, you're immoral now too, but whatever. She's confirming their biases about how terrible middle America is.
It's a strategic move. It was written in the teleprompter, and we've seen a number of ads that have been called, tying Donald Trump to the KKK, different super PACs that have been rolling out ads trying to play on this hate card over the past few weeks. Look, early voting is starting just in a few short weeks, October 3rd in Ohio. This can't be just some sort of faux pas, but it could come back to haunt her, like Mitt Romney's comments.
Well, yeah, when Mitt Romney talked about the 47% of Americans who did not pay federal taxes, and that certainly didn't go over well. But this is way worse than what Mitt Romney ever could. I mean, Mitt Romney was stating a fact. I'm sorry. He was stating a pure fact, which she is saying, if you don't agree with her, if you like Donald Trump, then you're an idiot. You're a jerk. And that's a real problem here in America. If the people we can't have an agreement with is their nemesis. I mean, can't we?
Well, we see people ripping out yard signs for Trump and ripping them up.
We believe in different things and still somewhat get along without somebody being, an idiot, a degenerate?
Yeah, a bad person.
Yeah.
And the macro problem is this. These remarks reflect the feelings of most people in Washington in positions of political power. You can't have the people running the country hate the country. You're not a good leader of people you despise. And that's one of the reasons that on a bipartisan basis, our leadership is not very good and hasn't done much for the country, I would say, because they hate middle America.
Well, our viewer comments support that sentiment this morning. Stephen writes this: the irony isn't making broad assumptions about his supporters the same kind of bigotry they accuse his supporters of.
And Kimberly emailed us. She wrote, she doesn't even consider that if she wins, she will need to be president for all of those she insulted as well, to your point,
That's
Tucker.
exactly. And by the way, she said the other half, but they don't be racist, but they're just dumb. Lisa writes this: it isn't wise to insult voters. It just makes people look at her character and question how she can call others deplorable. But she's not the only one, by the way, who went after the center of the country. Her husband did, too, in remarks. He was in Homewood, Pennsylvania, I believe yesterday, and he said this about people who don't support his wife. Watch.
We all know how her opponents done real well down in West Virginia and Eastern Kentucky, because the coal people don't like any of us anymore. They all voted for me. I won twice, and they did well. And they blame the president when the sun doesn't come up in the morning now.
I love that sort of aside. Oh, by the way, they voted for me twice.
It's a dig at his wife. I mean, does anybody want to see her elected president less than Bill Clinton? He's actively rooting against his wife.
But what's going on here? She had come out a few months ago, or if you recall, a few months ago, and talked about what she plans to do in coal country and run them out of business.
Shut them down.
You wonder why she's not doing well with the coal people.
But it also shows just how much the Democratic Party has changed and how much they've changed since the early 1990s.
Right.
Down in West Virginia, and I was down there talking to primary voters, they would say to me, we didn't leave the Democratic Party left us.
So true.
And not only are they concerned about the issues of coal and shutting down and losing their businesses, but they're concerned about jobs, but they're also concerned about pro-life, and that has become a big issue for some of them. And the Democrats have moved so far to the left that there's no room for compromise on anything.
You saw that shift, and I used to live in West Virginia. You saw that shift. You remember famously Joe Manchin running for the Senate, shooting a hole through the health care bill with a gun.
Right.
And that resonated with West Virginia voters in a way that it might not have 8 years earlier.
Because the Democratic Party, and I hate to admit this, but it's true, was once the party of the middle class. It really was. And now it's not. It's the party of the rich and the poor. And the Republican Party in Washington, by the way, has no interest in being the party of the middle class. That's one of the reasons they hate Trump so very, very much, is because he's attempting to represent people they find disgusting. But somebody needs to be the party of the middle class, right? They're still middle class.
Gary Johnson.